What's up, everybody? This is Alex from Trombone Guide. This is Guided Listening, Episode 2, and I am so thrilled to welcome my friend, the bass trombonist from the Atlanta Symphony. This is Brian Hecht.
What's up, guys? Thanks
Brian,
for having me, man.
yeah, Brian's the best. Brian began his studies at the University of Texas in Austin, where he studied with Nathaniel Brickens. After that, he went on and did a master's at Northwestern University, where he studied with the whole slew of people at Northwestern that are all super well known as giants in our field. Brian went on and has had a lucrative career as a bass trombonist in the Navy Band and then a bass trombonist in the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. Brian has played with virtually every large orchestra in the United States. He's been a soloist all over. He's a teacher as well, and recently has been a trailblazer in the online trombone space, running the largest digital studio that is, of course, Slide School, along with his coworkers in the Atlanta Symphony. Brian, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm going to start off with a question that everybody has been wondering. I've gotten this from at least 5 Patreon members. Everyone is very excited to talk to you. What was one thing that you struggled with as a younger player? And maybe you could talk a little bit about how you overcame that in your playing as a professional.
Yeah. I think one of the, not just even whenever I was a younger player, like middle school and high school, I mean, this followed me through college as well. It was my pitch. That was one thing that I struggled with constantly. I found myself making progress, albeit baby steps, when all the other fundamentals and I mean, high range also plagued me for a while as well. But pitch was one of those things that I couldn't get away from. As a bass trombone player, I can stay away from high range if I want. And a lot of the excerpts, there were plenty of auditions that didn't ask for Kodai and Franck. And so I was able to, sometimes stay away from it there as well. So I got past that. But pitch was something that no matter what I did, always haunted me. And it was to the point where even in grad school, the last thing that my professor Mulcahy said to me after my last master's recital was, Brian, you've got all your other ducks in a row. You've got everything else where it needs to be except for pitch. If you fix pitch, you can win a job. And this was one of those things that it really put it in perspective for me that, I guess I just needed one more person to tell me that, it doesn't matter how good you are at anything. If you don't have good pitch, it's out of tune and you can't get hired that way. So one of the things I wish I would have done a lot earlier on whenever I was younger was a lot more time with the piano and singing. Those are two things separately and together that I just didn't do any of. My teachers always told me, hey, sing that line. And I'd sing it in a lesson, but that'd be the only time I'd sing it. And I'd slug through my piano classes in school, and I even started on piano when I was a kid, but I stopped by the time I was like 6. And so I wish I would have played more piano and wrapped my ear around things before bringing them to the trombone. I think I would have had a lot better progress with that, and just in general.
Yeah. I mean, pitch is definitely a really critical thing both for tenor as well as bass, obviously,
Yeah.
like tuning slides. So you've obviously probably developed a lot of strategies that have helped you work through that. Obviously, now as a professional, you sound great and you can play in tune when necessary, of course. Maybe some of those strategies, if you wouldn't mind sharing them, things that have been really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've watched a lot of vocal masterclasses, voice masterclasses. Renee Fleming masterclasses are some of my favorite ones to find on YouTube. She has such a great approach to vowel shapes and tone color and pitch that I think really helps with the trombone. But just getting myself to try and do those things with my own voice really helped me listen better, right? I had this problem whenever I had my first kid. I was trying to sing nursery rhymes and I couldn't sing them
Oh,
in
wow.
tune. I could hear they were out of tune, but I always thought, I can play it in tune on the trombone. Well, then I tried, and it was like, no, you're just as out of tune. So I really recommend take those nursery rhymes you learned as a kid, play them at a piano, and sing along. Some simple fundamental choral exercises. They have daily routines like rising pentascales. Sing those at the piano and hold yourself accountable just like a vocal major would. And get yourself, like, work on your ear that way. That way, when you bring it to the trombone, there's fewer mistakes. You improve your pitch internally rather than having it go through the trombone and trying to, try to, you can blame so many of those errors. Oh, well, I was in the wrong position, or, mistake with my lips. But when you're singing, there's really not much you can blame it on other than your ear. And so it really helped me, hold myself accountable. So exercises, go to your nearest vocal coach, vocal teacher, and ask for their daily routine packet, and start doing it with your voice at the piano, and then work it onto the trombone.
Yeah, I really like that. Wow, that's a great idea. It's so strange how when we confront these things that we really struggle with, that we maybe try and hide in our playing, it's almost like it becomes a natural state that everything else just elevates as well. You realize that this thing that's been holding you back could actually be a strength if you just put the time into it. And that change of focus just changes everything.
Absolutely. I mean, I find that it's really easy for us to, because I feel like some of the challenges are on our instrument are so unique. With the slide, we can't just push a button down or push a string down right in the right spot, to get the note in tune. I feel like we're similar to the violin in that way, in that they have to put it in the exact spot to get the pitch to come out right in tune. But for us, the slide is such a tricky part of our instrument that it's so easy to blame things on it. But it doesn't make it any better that we have something to blame it. It just makes us feel better about that being an issue. That's like, well, if I had a better trombone, or if my slide was in better shape. But it's like, all those things you can overcome if you just have your ear in great shape.
Yeah, mind is powerful.
Absolutely.
That's great. I would love to ask you about how you organize your practice on a larger scale, day to day. And mainly what I'm curious about is how you avoid fatigue. You're obviously someone that practices a lot. You've got a lot of professional playing. You're teaching quite a bit. Inevitably, we're working with muscles and they need rest. I was wondering what you think about taking days off, how you plan days off, how often you do that, and what days away from the horn look like for you mentally and physically.
Yeah. I rarely take a day off the instrument. For me, it makes me feel worse. Especially like you think like, oh, I just had a really hard day yesterday, really, taxing. Let me take an entire day off. Well, I feel like whenever I come back the day after, I feel like I have damaged muscles, like they didn't get to break down and heal. So I really never take a day off because of this, because I feel better and I still feel recovered if I just get like an hour of easy fundamentals that day. Like if I want to call it an off day, my off days are just days that I only practice an hour. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy practice. It's not high, it's not loud. It's some mezzo piano buzzing, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, easy, just glissing scales, just like sticking to the low range, mid range, taking breaks as necessary so that I never feel like I'm exerting my chops, but just kind of getting blood flowing into the lips. That's my whole goal during that hour. And I feel recovered the next day. I never feel like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. With that said, like on an average day, I will, especially right now where I don't have many services. This is an unusual week that I'm going to have, I think 4 or 6 services with the ASO, but then I've got nothing like all November. So a typical day, whenever I'm not having any services, is going to be like 3 to 4 hours. An hour of daily routine fundamentals, an hour of, repertoire, songs, etudes, solos that I want to learn, and maybe like 30 to 40 minutes of buzzing in the morning, just nice, easy mezzo piano stuff. And then expanding it from there. I might go more than an hour in any of those sessions. But I think when life gets back to normal, I think this would probably be better, advice once we get back to normal. Be organized. I have a calendar both on my computer, on my phone. I have a calendar visually right here on my desk. So that I've always got the opportunity to just look somewhere and see what's going on this week, what's going on next week, what do I need to prepare for? Like, can I have an easy day? Can I like only practice an hour a day? Do I have time tomorrow and the next day that's not very taxing, or vice versa? If I see that the next 3 days are heavy, it helps me plan my practice for today. It's like, okay, I'll only do like an hour and a half today, and I'll get it really focused, really efficient. I'll create like a schedule, allow myself to anything that doesn't need to be on the horn, let's make it mental practice. But sort of knowing your schedule, knowing what you've got ahead of you and around you, I think is so crucial and important to taking care of your chops, keeping them healthy, so that like if we're playing a Harry Potter movie, those things whoop my face. Or an all John Williams concert, my gosh, that's probably the most exhausted I've ever been. And so I really have to look at the days surrounding that and say, it's like, all right, I know I have to play a recital the next week after that. I better front load a lot of my recital practice and let a lot of my mental practice surround those Harry Potter weeks or the John Williams weeks, so that I'm still getting it all in, but I'm just shifting it around to take care of my chops so I don't have any like crazy peaks in my practice.
Long-term athletic view of how to maintain. I like that. That's great.
Absolutely. Planning, man. Yeah.
So I know that you have talked a lot about buzzing with a lead pipe and lots of different tools that you use with like the mouthpiece and breathing devices and stuff like that. And obviously you double on tenor and contrabass trombone. So you have to have a pretty wide arsenal of skills to play, particularly at the level that you play at. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the tools that you use away from the horn, beyond just the piano with buzzing at pitch.
Yeah, sure. I've got my buddy Eric Henson. Dr. Eric Henson actually made this for me. It's like essentially if you've got a cutaway mouthpiece.
Oh, wow.
He 3D printed this, and this has been, I think, really useful to sort of see like, all right, what are my chops doing as I'm going through like shifts and stuff? Am I doing it smoothly? What am I doing? Right? Like I need to know, like what exactly is going on inside the mouthpiece, and oftentimes it can be very difficult. You know, it's like you can't see through a mouthpiece, right? So this helps me sort of see what's going on, and I'll either use like a mirror, or if I'm sitting at my desk, I'll just turn on a Zoom meeting and sort of see if I can figure out like, all right, how do I help explain this? How do I get better at it by having more knowledge of what my chops are doing? So this has been really helpful. Additionally, I use just a rim. Oh
yeah, those are great.
Right. It looks cool. I like owning it, but I don't use it as much. I got a lot of this has really been helpful in the high register, but it's not as helpful in my mids and lows. So I really only use this for like high register practice. Additionally, I don't really have too many like toys that I'll use. I've got a cowbell up here that I like to, use to keep me in time, I guess.
Ah, that's great.
I had to grab it because I didn't think you'd actually believe that I had a cowbell. I stole this from the Longhorn Band.
Oh, there you go. Proud. So when you're buzzing on the rim and you go into the low range and it doesn't really respond that much, and I'm only asking this because I run into the same problem when I work with my rim. Do you notice that that's a response of the lack of flow that you're getting on the rim and the fact that you need more flow in that lower register? Or is that just a focus issue with the aperture, do you think?
You mean like buzzing in the low register just on the rim?
Right, exactly.
I think it's
so effective.
Yeah, I think that it's a resistance thing. I think that our horns supply a certain amount of resistance, and obviously depending on the brand and what kind of horn you're playing, the valves, I mean, everything about it will change the resistance. And one of the keys to playing the trombone is leaning against that resistance, especially in the low range, and perfecting that lean, so to say, right? So whenever you're trying to buzz in the low register off the horn, I find it very difficult to do on the cutaway, the rim, or even just the mouthpiece alone. This is why I buzz with a lead pipe or like a hose or something, is for the low range, and also there's, some exercises I've developed to increase high range strength on the lead pipe as well. But I mainly developed this as the mouthpiece extender to help me with my low range, because if you want to work on your low range away from the instrument, sort of forging embouchures, getting across a shift, or just stability and creating tone in that low register through the buzz, it's very helpful to have something that gives you the resistance that is similar to what you get on the trombone. so that you don't find yourself creating bad habits to create resistance, like bringing the tongue up in the mouth or dropping the soft palate to sort of feel that back pressure to try lean against. You know what I mean? You can really create some bad habits. So, yeah, I wouldn't dive too much into that just personally.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great advice. Something that I've worked on a lot in my playing is my lower register playing. It's not something that comes naturally. And I think the biggest breakthrough I've made in recent memory is the idea that I am indeed creating resistance in the back of my throat to compensate for a lack of resistance when trying to buzz on the mouthpiece. And you just run out into a lot of back pressure buildup that does not.
Honestly, that's so common, man. I've worked with so many tenor trombone players that they're not. I mean, tenor trombones tend to not practice the low range as much as the mids and the highs. Absolutely. So when they get down there, it's a different feeling. Bass trombones, I think, get this a little bit more just because that's where they're more at home. But you've got to like find the resistance that your horn gives you, and you lean on it with your air just enough. If you lean too far, you get edgy. If you don't lean enough, it's real diffuse. But if you lean on it just enough, you'll find this like happy point where your air pressure and air speed is leaning against it, and it just allows the sound to open up and blossom. And it's sort of like a fear thing. It's like a trust thing. Like, like if you don't want to lean into it because at first you don't feel like you have a lot of control, because it's that like forward feeling, like that, like what's going to catch me. And like, you have to learn that resistance of your horn and how to play with it. You're going to sound bad at first, but I always find that, you got to get through the fog of sounding bad before you start sounding great.
The most common question I've gotten by far, and I'm sure you get this every day of your life when you talk to people, everybody talks about your tone and how much warmth and core you get in your sound. And it's something, obviously, I'm sure you should be proud of because it's excellent. But I'd love to know if you could talk a little bit about your internal idea on tone and how you work on that, and maybe your sound concept a little too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My tone is something that a bit of it came naturally to me. Whenever I first started playing the trombone, that was one of the things that my first teacher, John Bowles, was, kind of complimenting me on. It's like, well, you've got tone. Now we just have to find everything else. And I was on tenor trombone for the longest time, but whenever I switched to bass trombone, this is where I really had to, like, I didn't switch to bass and it was just there. I really had to approach it the right way. And I think what was really helpful was the way I approached bass trombone. Before I even owned a bass trombone, I knew I was switching because it was after my junior year of undergrad. Sophomore year of undergrad, before my junior year, that summer. At the end of my sophomore year, I finally caved in to Dr. Brickens telling me that maybe I'm not going to be a professional tenor trombone player and that I should switch to bass.
We'll thank him for that decision.
Yeah. I thank him all the time. And I was really upset about it. But the first thing he did to me, I didn't own a bass trombone at the time. I got one over the summer, but he said, you need to buy Charlie Vernon CD, Randy Hawes CD, Donald Knobs CD, Blair Bollinger CD. These are the big ones out, and Ben Van Dyke. And so I bought all those CDs, and I started listening before I ever even got the bass trombone. Oh, wow. And so this, I think, just set me up right, that as I was figuring out what I needed to do, I would not accept anything that didn't sound like those guys, right? And specifically, I really I love the way they all play musically. I love them as musicians, all of them. But I really gravitated towards Charlie and Randy. I started it kind of had to do with the horn I had. I got this old Frankenbone Bach. It was like Bach Bell, Edwards Slide, Bach Thayers. And it was a tank. It was so heavy. I think that also, it just created a fat sound. It created a huge sound because of, you flick the bell and it sounded like you hit the side of, a massive Ford F-450 or something, right? It did not resonate at all. And so, as I was teaching myself how to just hold a pedal B flat or hold a B flat bottom of the staff, long tones, I had Charlie Vernon's sound in my mind and Randy Hawes' sound in my mind. And I just knew that I was like, all right, well, it doesn't sound like that yet, so I have to keep going. Nothing is good enough until it sounds like that. And one of the things that I could really do well, but whenever I came back my junior year of undergrad, was my sound. I had a lot to learn and everything else. But Dr. Brickens, I came back and he was like, dude, I could not believe it, but you sounded like a young Charlie Vernon up there. And I will never forget him saying that, because that was one of the biggest compliments he could have given me.
Yeah.
And so I constantly will advise people to listen, 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 and hold yourself to the highest standard possible. If it doesn't sound like that sound you want it to, keep going. Don't accept anything else. Don't allow yourself to say, well, this is close enough. I'm sure I'll do well with this sound. Whenever you need to know there's somebody else out there, and it only takes one person who is not going to be okay with that, who's going to keep going until they've achieved a sound that's on the same level as their heroes, right? And it's one of those things where I constantly have this like sort of cartoon playing in my head of the moment I find myself reaching that bar that I've set as my standard, sort of grabbing it like the last rung in the ladder. Instead of smiling and being happy, I throw it higher.
Right.
And that's something that I've always brought into my practice, that be happy that you've achieved something, but never let yourself rise above that standard, or at least think you have. With your sound goals, never be happy until you can't tell the difference between your hero's sound and your sound. And then that's where I think I built my entire fundamentals on, I have to sound like Charlie. I have to sound like Randy. And there were a lot of things where I was like, I have to sound like Blair, and I would just, the moment I started sounding like that, I would not leave the practice room until I could make myself sound like it at least one more time. And then I'd get back in the practice room the next day and be like, all right, long tones, here we go again. I got to sound like Charlie. I got to sound like Randy. I got to sound like Blair.
Yeah,
and
it's really interesting. All this that you're saying is so valuable. And I think particularly for students, I have to point out that it's easy for someone to hear you say this and say, well, this is a great testament to the subconscious mind's power to be able to hear a sound and grow a sound. But this isn't just a subconscious mind thing, because your conscious mind is working with your subconscious. Your conscious mind is setting these standards and saying, no, nothing else is acceptable. So it seems like the real strength is the combination of the subconscious ability to pattern recognize and match, and the conscious brain setting these unachievable standards. And, for students, it's very easy to get depressed when you're continually feeling like you're not reaching a goal or a standard. But remember that, just like you said, our standards are constantly raising. So in fact, we are doing far better than our standards would have been months ago. But because that ladder rung is just constantly tossed higher, you're going to have to get used to being, not satisfied. That's a state that we all want to be in, I think.
That's such a great way of putting it, man. I love the way that you put that, the subconscious and the conscious working together. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
It's powerful, isn't it? It really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And going along with what you were saying with the a lot of students do struggle, and I still struggle as well. I mean, I think everybody still struggles with meeting their goals, meeting their expectations, not realizing how well they're doing, because whenever you're getting better at an instrument, at really any instrument, it's baby steps. Nobody notices massive amounts of growth overnight, every single night. You might have breakthroughs, sure, but in between those breakthroughs, it's always baby steps. And one thing that kept me going and kept me motivated through my entire career so far is, don't ask yourself, why am I not as good as I want to be right now? Ask yourself, am I better than I was 6 months ago? Am I better than I was a year ago? And my answer has always been yes, because I'm always trying to get better. And exactly what you said, we don't realize that our goals keep getting higher. Our standards keep getting higher. To us, they're still just the same standards, but you got to give yourself credit that they're higher standards, right? You did meet the goals you set for yourself last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, growth is not optional if you're setting goals constantly. It just happens.
Yeah.
It's a fast time. Oh wow, that's so inspiring. Now, I hope you all feel like you want to pick up your horns and practice, because that's about where I am today. Here's a great question that has popped up a few times that I think is particularly relevant to players at your level, and it's something that I try and ask everybody I talk to. Has there ever been something in your career that was really difficult for you to conquer emotionally, or mentally in your playing beyond just a difficulty and something that was persistent that maybe made you think, oh, maybe it's time to consider a different career? And if there was, what kept you in the game? What kept that fire lit for you?
Yeah, man, absolutely. You know, this is I've actually never been asked this question. I think it's such a great question because it is something I struggled with. You know, I was never top of my studio until my last year of grad school. That's a long time to not be the best at your school and to constantly be asking yourself, it's like, if I'm not beating the people at my school, how am I supposed to beat everybody out there for a job? Um, you know, and that was something I struggled with. And I even, you know, whenever I was at University of Texas, I didn't even get in at first. You know, like this is a story I tell a lot, and so I won't tell the whole thing here, but I didn't get in. Dr. Brickens said maybe in the spring we'll talk again about getting you in, and my brain was just excited that he was like, oh, the spring. So I just got myself in by making all of my major changes. I literally did everything I needed to change my major and just waited for him to sign it. But he reluctantly let me in, and so I entered the bottom of my studio my freshman year at UT, and I gradually worked my way up, but I was never in the top ensemble. My last semester, I was in the top ensemble, but I didn't get to play. I played offstage brass on Pines of Rome and like an opera, and that was it the entire year, because there were two bass trombone players ahead of me that got to play in the rotation, and so I pretty much just had a practice period. And so that was really discouraging, and a lot of people said, wait, you're a performance major? And I was one of the few performance majors, you know, at a school at the time that had a lot of music ed majors. And I got the question all the time, like, oh, well, are you at the top of your studio? I was like, well, no. And so many people were like, you're never going to make it then. And like, that's just, first of all, like, that's a terrible thing for someone to say to anybody, right? But people are going to say it to you, especially in a cutthroat field like music. You know, and they had no idea what my definition of success was. They have no idea whether it was an orchestra, whether it was teaching, whether it was writing books, whether it was anything, any number of things, gigging, like anything. Those are all examples of success in our field. But I got a lot of people that, you know, said like, look, if you're not at Juilliard or you're not at, you know, the top conservatories in Europe, then how do you expect to beat those players? And so there was a lot of discouragement that really made me consider, like, well, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Maybe I need to go back to the family profession of medicine and just do like what my parents did and my grandparents did, and I'll just do that. I had that thought plenty of times, but every time I tried picking up a book that wasn't music, I just kept thinking about music, and I couldn't get myself through it. And there was I actually well, before I say that, I had to get myself to realize that I don't care if I'm broke as long as I'm doing something I love. Like that's valuable in life to me, is being happy and doing what I love. Money wasn't an issue. It was someone actually even asked me, like, if money's not an issue, what would you choose? I said music every time. But you know, of all the discouraging things in undergrad, one of the things was I was actually dating a girl at the time. We were very serious. And like she kind of was like sat me down, this serious conversation one time. She's like, "So, what's your plan for the future?" I was like, "I'm gonna win a job somewhere." And she laughed at me, and she goes, "No, really, like, what are you gonna do to make money? Like, you're not gonna make it as a musician." And I was just like, "Well, I'm gonna first start by breaking up with you,
Yeah, that's
and then." And I'm going to surround myself with people that, you know, lift me up. And that's exactly what I did. That's, you know, to get myself out of this, is I stopped hanging out with the people that said I wasn't going to make it. If you're going to laugh at my ambitions, well, I'm going to go hang out with people who have the same ambitions as me, and we're going to build each other up. And that was huge, man. That was so valuable. I found a group of friends in undergrad and in grad school, and by attending music festivals, which that's something I wish that I would have done way sooner. If I could go back and tell myself of my freshman year of college or like junior, senior of high school, attend summer music festivals, because you're going to find these people there. You're going to find the people that are also as ambitious as you are to have a career in music, and they're going to lift you up. and they're going to tell you like, no, let's keep going, let's keep practicing, you can do this. And it was whenever I found those people that I really started to believe. And once I had the belief that I was going to do it, and there were people around me telling me, yeah, you are going to do it, then it just became a matter of when. And that, I think, was really important to battling that, wanting that urge to kind of maybe hang it up.
Yeah. Wow. That's so empowering. And I've heard you tell that story, but it's particularly empowering the way you phrased it, because, and this is for everybody listening. The more and more people that you meet at Brian's level of playing, the more you realize that nobody was the most talented. Nobody had it the easiest. Nobody did it come most naturally for. People that sit in the top jobs are the people that survived the longest and didn't give up. They're the people that just kept trying and kept working. And eventually you look around, you take step-by-step line, eventually you're on top of the mountain. It really does work like that. And it's incredibly empowering that the great equalizer is time. Anybody can learn to do very difficult things if you just continually work at it slowly. You measure your progress and you continue to stay curious, and make these discoveries piece by piece. You build it up. And yeah, I love what you said about surrounding yourself with people that inspire you. I always think about that age-old quote: "You are a combination of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And if you look around at the people you spend, the 5 people you spend the most time with, you look at their personality traits, you look at their ambition, you look at their drive, you look at their emotional strength, you look at their mood. This is who you are. You adapt from these people, and yeah, you water seeks its level, right? You've gotta be inspired all the time.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're moving into lightning round questions. These are just a few short ones here before I let Brian go here. Brian, can you talk a little bit about if you had a favorite trombone or bass trombone concerto, maybe one you've played, maybe one you've listened to? You have a favorite?
They're all so good. I don't know. You know what? It's probably easier just because I'm always gonna pick the bass trombone concerto, but the tenor trombone concerto is gonna have to be the Grandal. I absolutely love that piece. I know it's like such a predictable answer, but I'm whenever I go buy Bluebell ice cream, I get the natural vanilla bean. That's just what I like. I like the mainstays in that Grandal. It's stood the test of time because it's good. It's really good. Not to say that it's not. There aren't close seconds and thirds and fourths and all that, but that's. I always love pulling that out and just playing through it. It's such great music. And for the bass trombone, I feel like this changes from time to time, but right now it's the Uazen Concerto. I keep that one out on my stand because I'm probably gonna cycle that piece into my recitals every couple of years for the rest of my career. Whereas the other slots in my recitals will get programmed with a lot of new commissions and chamber works and stuff like that. I have like a group of like 5 to 10 solos that I'm going to play the rest of my career, just sort of in rotation, and then I'll put it back on the stand for a few years and bring it back out, and that's one of them, Uazen Concerto for sure.
Yeah, I love that piece too. Do you have a most memorable performance, maybe with Atlanta or with a different orchestra, that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, this one for me, it's Atlanta Symphony, Spano conducting, Shostakovich 7, Leningrad, and we were talking, me, Nate, and we had Jason Robbins from the Alabama Symphony 7 with us, and we're like, if we could get a second section down here, do we want to piece it together with people, like great people, or get people who play together, and it would just be an incredible section? And we went with the latter, right? Because you can just take that section and plop them in. And so we called Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow.
And we weren't able to get all of them. We got Jeff D and Jim Nova down. And then we brought in Koichiro Yamamoto.
He knows how
and
to play trombone.
Koichiro, who played second trombone, an incredible principal. Everybody knows that, but he's also an incredible second trombone player. He played second in the Met for 10 years. He sat second in the section of Nate. I think it was Nate, him, and me. And then Jason Robbins sat principal in the other section of Jason, Jim, and Jeff.
Wow.
I mean, and it was incredible all throughout. But the moment that really got me is that, so it helps to explain this a little bit. The way we were set up was that we had he put the two sections with like sort of stacked side by side, not stacked, side by side. So, and then he stacked the principals next to each other and went out. So I was actually right in the middle of the orchestra, right? It went first, like if I'm looking out at the audience, it was first through third, first through third. So I'm sitting next to principal trumpet, and I'm literally right in front of Spano. And it gets to the point, the build up in the final movement where the bass trombone, like it's building this moment, and the bass trombone goes ba ba bum ba ba bum ba ba bum ba, and it was just this insane moment where the entire, like, Spano looked at me, gave me that smile, and was just like, "Do it." And so, like, he is a trombone lover. He is a friend of the trombone section and brass in general. And you just see him sort of just like look up and like smile as the entire orchestra sonically came together for this moment. And I was, you know, cranking as much sound as I could before I got to edge, and it just fit around me. Everybody was matching dynamic, matching musical message, and it's a moment I'll never forget, because after that moment happened, Spano just sort of brought his face back down, and you could just see that was exactly what he wanted out of the orchestra. And he trusted me to sort of lead us into that section. That was, there's very few times bass trombone gets to lead anything. And that was one of the coolest moments I've ever experienced.
That's so cool. Wow.
Yeah.
I will comment as well that I think Jeff D might be the most underrated bass trombonist on the planet. Talk about an incredible player.
Oh my God, that guy's one of my favorite players.
Yeah.
And favorite people. If you've never gotten to meet Jeff, he's super approachable. Like, just one of the nicest guys I've ever met. If anyone watching, reach out to Jeff. Tell him Brian said hi. And talk to him. I guarantee he'll talk to you, and he's just one of the greatest trombone players on the planet.
This is true.
Yeah.
Brian, I'd love to give you a little bit of time to talk about some of the projects you're working on right now. I know that you are definitely occupying the digital space nice and strong with Slide School. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Slide School, actually, I debated wearing this shirt right here.
Look at that.
These are our new shirts. This has been a project that Nathan and I have, you know, sort of stumbled upon. Like, he's been talking a lot with his wife, Karen, you know, and they brought this idea to me. And Nate and I had kind of talked about it a little bit before, but neither of us had the brain that his wife does. And we didn't really know how to get it going. And so Karen brought it to us, and we started Slide School in July. We've done it for 3 months, and we're now 87 members strong. And it really does function like a trombone studio, you know, like there's lots of participation. We have 2 master classes every single week, a tenor and a bass. Nate runs one, I run one. We post all of our classes on our social media and on our website, slide-school.com. And every month we also give back to our members of our studio, and we bring in a different professional musician or educator to give a free master class. This is not extra to any of the students. They pay for the 2 master classes a week. And it ends up totaling to like $6 or $7 a class. Like, it's really cheap. It's $50 for the whole month. And in a typical, you know, 4-week month, you're going to get 8 classes. So do the math. It's super cheap for a master class, and then you get a professional educator or performer on top of that. Last month we had Joe Alessi. This month we have Peter Steiner. We're continuing on with George Curran, Martin Skippers, Megumi Kanda, and bringing in Dr. Nathaniel Brickens in February to talk about college admissions, college auditions, to take the veil off of how to get into the college of your choice, and like what a top professor looks for, what appeals to them in auditions for students trying to get into those studios. And we just, with every step, and the more we grow, we want to keep giving back to the students. So eventually, as we grow, we've talked about bringing in 2 master classes from guest artists around the world, like one from America, one from Europe, every single month so that players can learn to not only how to get a job here in the States, but if it's their dream to get a job over in Europe or in Asia, we want them to have that education too. We're also going to be expanding into the jazz commercial world with some master classes from artists there. We really want this to be, and our idea behind this is not to steal students from educators out there doing their thing. We want to supplement. So we have every month we have 2 open master classes where bring your stuff in for lessons. Bring it in for your trombone choir at your school. Play it for us and for your studio, and we can all help get better together. We'll help you build that up so that you can bring your absolute best product into your lesson teacher, and they can help build you even more. And it's a way to get better faster than anyone who's not in slide school.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer, guys. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all missing one thing right now, and that's community. And this isn't just an educational opportunity, this is a community as well. I would imagine that most of your members are probably interacting outside of slide school with each other. They're all friends on Facebook. They're all following each other on social media. This is a community that will serve you, for years to come. If you become professionals and you enter that world, these are people you're going to remember. And I can't even tell you how great a deal that is for 8 master classes. I mean, you add up Netflix and Disney Plus and all your other memberships, and you weigh those against 8 master classes with world-class players a month. We're never going to get this kind of access again to players when they're on breaks. I mean, this is an absolute no-brainer. You should all check this out for sure.
I mean, it's the cost of a couple cups of coffee a week. You trade that for some trombone classes, and it's as long as I don't want to dig in anybody's coffee obsession here, but what you said about community is absolutely right. We have all of our classes are live and interactive on Zoom. We also post them to our private Facebook group where anybody can post questions. A lot of our members will post videos of themselves playing. We have members posting 2 different ways of playing a cadenza and polling our 87-person studio, saying, what do you guys think I should do with this cadenza? Should I play it this way, play it that way? Oftentimes people will post their progress, say, look, I was having some trouble with the rhythm on the ride. This is where I am now. And it's a great way for, the community to come together and say, great job, man. Keep going. That's fantastic. And it's really tough to get that whenever everything's so virtual these days.
It's such a great thing. And, it just occurred to me, and this is actually strange, but between you and Nathan, you guys have 5 different music schools that you've attended that are all from different schools of teaching. That's actually quite irregular in a section. But with that co-teaching, you have many different pedagogical backgrounds that you can share. In fact, I think this might be one of the only situations where you guys can hear from 2 teachers at once that have such varied backgrounds. That's actually brilliant.
Well, and the great thing about it too is that we can not only work with you on bass trombone and tenor trombone, but I've taught lessons on contra. Nathan can teach lessons on euphonium and bass trumpet and alto trombone. So it covers a wide range of brass instruments that are often going to be requested in the orchestral world and teaching world.
That's brilliant. So guys, check that out, Slide School. I'm going to thank you so much, Brian, for all of your time today. This has been super
Thank you.
Helpful.